The NaviPro IT Break, 15 entertaining minutes with our experts on hot topics. They're designed to help you keep up to date on the latest IT trends. Welcome everybody to this edition 32 of IT Break, your IT information rendezvous. My name is Pierre Tocci. I'm a senior consultant IT transformation at NaviPro. And today my guest is Karim Lacasse, Director Sales of Keysight. Good afternoon, Karim.
Hi, Pierre. How are you?
Good, thank you. So today our topic is a shift from a reactive to a proactive organization. Karim, what does this mean?
So it's basically what is being proactive, right? It's the mindset of trying to solve a problem before it happens or before it occurs. And proactive behavior, sometimes it's hard to measure the benefits of it. But if you look at how the technology has evolved in the last few years, or even now in the last few months, how the environment has evolved, you're thinking about cloud virtualization. You combine that with the pandemic effects. Being proactive in your network or your IT culture organization would reap a lot of benefits. So it's basically having that mindset of a proactive culture versus a reactive culture.
I understand that Keysight is mainly a set of tools that enables testing. So this being said, is there a bigger need for proactive testing since we're living in chaotic times right now?
Right. So, and it's interesting you say that. So Keysight definitely comes from the days of Hewlett-Packard, with always in telecom, and we offer a variety of different segments of solutions. One of them is test and measurement, and the other one, which focuses on pre-deployment testing, so really assessing the performance and the security of whether it could be a network, could be a system in a network, and then that is all about pre-deployment testing, so understanding the performance and security of a particular environment. On the other side, you have the collection or production monitoring. So the network is live, things are happening, and you want to understand how the customers are experiencing the network, right? So these are kind of the pre-deployment solutions and the post-deployment or operational solutions. In the case of testing, what's interesting is we've crossed this bridge where even in production, if you have the ability to test and assess continuously what the environment is going through, you can actually make decisions and tweaks and do course correction before a problem happens. And that's really where Keysight comes in with what we call proactive testing.
I see. Traditionally, whenever we needed to test something, it was part of a project. Project was defined. We had our milestones, we had our project team, we had our test environment, and so forth. Everything was scheduled and organized. I would assume, like we've discussed in many of our webinars, things since the COVID came so quick that sometimes you need to get active, reactive right away and fix stuff. Is this how Keysight intervenes much quicker than how we used to do stuff?
Yeah, so let's say obviously the pandemic had all kinds of effect on our customers, on the environment, and some customers were ready, some customers were not ready, or some networks were ready and some networks were just not ready. What's interesting with this culture, this approach, is the ability to have that integrated to your architecture. For example, if we've been testing, you're in a network and it's in production and you're continuously collecting the experience of your customers or whoever's using your network, you're able to basically, whether you're going to a huge load like we've seen in the last few months, where a lot of companies were concerned about, number one, security, second is performance, and then obviously comes with user experience with all the people at home and on Teams meetings and Zoom meetings and so on. So 100% yes, having that ability built in your culture and your organization is extremely important. And COVID is one example of what could happen, right?
Yeah. See, what could happen and what had happened since February is that a lot of I won't say a lot. All companies had to extend their network. Network used to be delimited. Now network is all over the place, not only home, but where we happen to be when we need to do the Teams or the Zoom or whatever we need to do. So this being said, how do you see facilitating the testing environment when you have tool sets just like Keysight?
Right. So what's interesting and what we've been doing with our customers. So in Canada, we work with banks, we work with government agencies, we work with network manufacturers, service providers, and what we've done in some cases is we've integrated what we call proactive testing as part of their IT strategy. If you look at the last 5-10 years or even more than that, most of the strategies are built on a reactive environment. So you have a network, you have tools that are looking at how the network is doing, and then you're analyzing that data and you're making decisions. So if something happened, somebody called, the IT or a customer service, and they're unhappy about whatever application, and then you have to look at the data, analytics, logs, and figure out what happened, when it happened, where it happened.
Yeah.
And even to this day, that is probably how most companies and most IT environments are operating. Now, what we've seen is this method will continue to happen. So reactiveness, forensics is really important. What we're trying to do here is integrate some active testing as part of the data points that the IT teams are collecting. For example, you could deploy agents in your network that could be in different cities, different data centers, different continents and countries, and you're generating and simulating several users. It could be 10 users, could be 100 users, or even more, depending on the scale of your network. But you're actually doing this based on the profile of your own network users, and you're collecting data constantly. So you could run an analysis or a test basically maybe every day or every night at 2 a.m. or every hour if you wanted, where you're constantly collecting data on that experience. And that data is simulated users. So it's not real data, it's not real users, but these are agents that are basically generating an application or a transaction, and it looks like, to the network, it looks like these are real users, but they are not. But that becomes super powerful when you're actually doing benchmarking and you're creating all these trends based on these data points.
So basically, you are creating the conditions that your test environment would need for the test to be efficient and true.
That's right. And you can build thresholds on this. So for example, maybe you run voice over IP or video or different types of applications on your network. And you have each application has a threshold in terms of latency, jitter, packet loss, and so on. And what's interesting here is these thresholds, you can play with them, but you can also be safe. And what I mean by that is, as you're building your benchmarks, you can actually see, well, you know what, today latency is up 1% on this particular application. Okay, that's within our acceptance threshold. But then you rerun the test the day after, or maybe the next week, or for several weeks, one after the other, and then do you see a trend? So the latency maybe is going up for a particular application continuously, and you know that in 2 weeks or 3 weeks you will have a problem with this application. And is it a problem with the application? Is it a problem that is localized to that environment or that network segment? Now, with Keysight tools or with the proactive approach, you get that data before the problem happens. So you're able to react, make changes, update, do what you need to do actually before you kind of hit that wall.
And could I consider that I could be using Keysight without knowing exactly the type of technology that I want to deploy at the end? I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm told that I should be implementing a one accelerator within the company. Is it a good scenario to say, hey, we'll see, first create the conditions and see if it's worth doing it before buying the technology?
That's right. So the beauty here is your ability to do before and after scenarios. So
okay,
you first off is when you're benchmarking your environment continuously, you gather these data points and you can say, well, today I'm here, yesterday I was there, and you know this for a fact. These are real data points that you have in front of you. Then comes the decision of adding something to your network. It could be a security-based tool, it could be a network-based tool, or a one accelerator, as you mentioned. And you could actually test this. So you can say, my experience without it is this. I'm going to add it. I'm going to rerun this exact same benchmark, and then I can make a decision. Not only that is you get almost surgical information on which application do you need to accelerate. Maybe you don't need to have all your traffic to go through that system. Maybe you can say, you know what, this and this and this on these locations, it needs to go through it. But again, you have now the power to make that decision with facts instead of kind of guesstimating, is this going to work? Is this going to help? Or sometimes even just reading the spec sheet of, a manufacturer. Sometimes it's actually good to have real data points in the jungle, right?
Yeah. So I guess that by being able to better produce the test environment with real conditions, accurate conditions, you can lay out better scenarios, better what ifs, right? Because you need to look for these outliers that may happen. And at the end of the day, your decision on buying technology is much more secured because you got real facts.
Exactly. And it's even truer now with distributed networks, going to the cloud, virtualizing services. We work with several customers that have been in business for tens of years, and they've been managing a network and they've been online for a while, but now the network is changing and they still want that ability to say, hey, I have 5,000 users here. What happens is if I put them in the cloud over there, what will be the impact on the performance, or what is the impact on the security? So we have that ability to simulate transactions, simulate attacks, and simulate different profiles that are alive and well in your network to help you make these decisions. Whether you're upgrading your network, you want to make configuration changes, you're thinking about re-architecturing some part of it, or you want to move certain portions to the cloud, you definitely want and need that data as you make your decisions.
Could you give me, to conclude on our discussion today, could you give me an example of a project, no names, no, just type of stuff, real life?
Yeah, so I mean, we have several. So as I mentioned, we work with different types of enterprises and so on. And one good one today is kind of healthcare. There's a lot going on online. There could be a lot more going on online. But one typical thing that a good example here is we've worked with the hospital network not too long ago where they are taking X-rays. So they're taking a picture of a patient, and it's a high resolution picture. And the specialist who reviews that picture, sometimes they're not on site or they're not there. So what they'll do is that they actually have a homegrown application that sends that picture to the specialist, for the doctor, to look at the X-ray. Now, hospitals, they're not a telecom high tech. I mean, they are high tech, right? But they are not IT networking people. That is not their
science
mandate,
people,
right? Exactly. Yeah. And they're there to save people and let's go, right? So what's interesting here is every time they would actually take that snapshot and send it to the specialist, you have a whole network here that would basically become frozen. Some applications would time out. People would not be able to do their work. And in some cases, some of the pictures are really, really big, and they could take a couple seconds to actually transfer. But you have these interruptions. You have patients that keep coming, right? So they really had no easy way to identify exactly when this happened, why it happens, where it happens. And basically, again, having data points to make a decision. Is it the network? Is it an application? Is it my provider? What is the problem? So we came in, provided these agents across their environment, and we ran assessments continuously. So we collected data nonstop, and we also asked them to run their own day-to-day work in the meantime. And we can actually see the exact time where people were actually starting an application and the impact on the network, on latency, on packet loss and timeout. But now the hospital people had a report with data points, and they could see where this is happening, how this is happening, and you could easily go to the provider and say, here's what's going on, and we need this fixed ASAP. So that's one example of how we can help with proactive testing.
So I guess once you put this in place, I mean, it becomes a model for the others, right?
Yep.
And I would guess also that the lessons learned are the good lessons that you need to learn, as opposed to trusting your results on false positives or false negatives, however we want to call them. I mean, you base your decisions on true facts and examples and what you need to live with the goods and the bads.
And it's even, you look at the breaches today and the attacks and what's going on. And we hear some in the news, but obviously I think what we hear in the news is probably the tip of the iceberg. Your ability to assess the performance of your network is obviously super important, but also assessing the security, right? We are now in full mode of having or giving that ability to our customers where they can actually safely attack their network. But the reason here is you want to find the weaknesses in your network. Where are they? Why are they there? And what can I do to get better? But if you get a metric and say, you know what, you got a score of 70% on this assessment, and then you make some changes and now you're at 76 or 85, this is good data to have, because again, you're making decisions that are having a really good impact on your environment.
Well, thank you, Karim. That was a very interesting conversation, going beyond, just putting data at testing, but you create the real conditions of tests. It avoids a lot of errors, should I say? So thank you again, Karim.
Thank you, Pierre.
So thank you again, everybody, for having participated in this IT break. Just to remind you that our IT breaks, all 31 or 32 of them, are available on our hub of content at navipro or hub.navipro.com, as well as many webinars. And again, thank you again for being here today, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. You want access to a range of cutting-edge information? Go to our online content area at hub.navipro.com.